Welcome to Managing Love Intelligently. I'm Jason.
And I'm Stephen Ng, a marriage and family therapist.
So how this works is I present a topic to Steve, which I planned ahead of time, but Steve has no idea about, and we talk about it for an hour or so. Today's topic is how body image impacts relationships.
Ooh.
Big one. So before we kick off the conversation, if you have a question for Steve, visit stephening.com and fill out the contact form. At the end of each episode, Steve will answer a listener question, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, and the way we do it in this format, my not knowing what's coming up is the way that you're probably going to be faced with this topic coming up in your life, where all of a sudden, for example, in this case, you realize your mate has body image issues and you were not ready to have that conversation that day just before going to work.
No, but it may clarify some things as to why.
Certainly hope so, yeah. Right?
Yeah, so that's why we do it that way, and just have a natural conversation here. And if you enjoy the podcast and find the information helpful, please subscribe and share it with your family and friends. And we could use some reviews as well. If you enjoy it, write something good.
And if you don't like it, try to get your enemy's email address and subscribe them to the podcast. That'd be great. That would just be great. Drive them crazy.
So today we're talking about body image and how it impacts relationships. And I was thinking we could do this with men and women from both perspectives, even though we're guys. So mostly be talking about guys, but I also think probably you've had women maybe as clients who've had this issue.
Well, I've listened to the stories of woe from both, well, I could say all four perspectives: women talking about their own bodies, women talking about their men and the men's issues, or even, gosh, I guess there's like 6-7 different ways of looking at this, and men who take exception to her body, and that his criticism is creating body issues for her. And then, and you flip the script and it can go the other way too, where he's always had issues, or he never had issues until she started making remarks, or maybe over the passage of time, he or she put on some weight or got out of shape or just simply aged. All of this stuff happens. And so body image is, it's a huge issue.
So we got a lot to talk about. I didn't even think of it that many. I mean, I thought about it that way, but there are more combinations than I thought. So I guess we could start by, so where does this come from? I guess, does it start, say, like, how do people develop body issues? I remember you mentioning like men have He-Man as like their thing that they're looking up to. And then women kind of, Barbie is like something where there's like this ideal sort of thing that we have in society. Is that true, or is that just...
Well, let me avoid that question.
Okay.
And then you can bring me back to it. I do think people talk a lot about the pressure of the media on women in particular. But I think remembering our overarching goal in a relationship is to develop intimacy, because it's relatively easy for us initially, and we're only pursuing the relationship because we're already in love. We're already attracted to this person. But intimacy is the ability to safely share my life with another. And if I don't feel safe sharing my physical being with another, then I'm not going to be able to have that kind of sexual intimacy that involves my being without clothes, my being in sexual situations, because I'm going to be so uncomfortable. And that's why this matters. So I think, I think that is the goal. And it's with that in mind that, we talk about this. So where it comes from, I honestly can tell you, it comes from so many different sources. There's like no way to predict it. But because it could come, let's say with you as a man, it could have come from criticism that your dad gave you when you were growing up. It could have come from criticism other boys gave you, in the athletic area of your life, or it could have come from a single remark a single girlfriend made long ago. And the same thing is true for women. And I think, yeah, I want to acknowledge women can say it's a bigger problem, but it doesn't really matter, because whether it's a bigger problem for women or not, because if it's a problem, it's a problem for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that we don't date the entire race of womankind or mankind. We're just dating individuals, and we're getting involved with individuals. Even in a polyamorous relationship, it's one at a time as we get to know them. So it matters that they have the problem, and where it came from is best left, I think, to their therapist to help them figure out and to understand and maybe to escape. But is it going to be a problem? Well, absolutely. I mean, if you have to grit your teeth, it's to share your body with somebody. It's a little bit like regularly being shameful and feeling, an infusion of shame every time somebody asks you about your feelings, or every time somebody asks you, so how did it go at work today? And if that's true every day, then intimacy is really not possible. So it's just simply unsustainable. And that's why I think, again, I hope it isn't dreadfully repetitive, but this is the kind of thing that an intentional interview should be really helpful in getting to the bottom of.
So would you ask directly about body issues, or it'd be like, are you like being naked? Like what?
Well, your question, the way it's phrased, is a really good example of how a lot of us we don't have our words. We don't have those sentences. Like, how would I comfortably ask or talk about this thing? And I think the best intentional interviews include a lot of sharing on my part, where I make it safe for the person I'm dating to open up about their life. So if I said something like, if she said, how is it you're still single? You're so incredibly manly and good looking for a man of your advanced age. I might say, well, it's been kind of fearful for me to get involved, because I came out of a relationship where, my partner really had some body image issues. And I go on vulnerably sharing the difficulty of being in a relationship like that.
And what would be some of those vulnerable or difficulties if you're in a relationship with somebody with body image issues?
Oh, well, it's always goes back to shame, where where the person with body image issues feels ashamed of their body. And that's really the deal breaker. There are plenty of men with pot bellies who pat their belly and are quite comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Who say, well, you got a big tool, you got to build a shed.
Yeah. Is that what they say?
I've heard so many guys say that.
So big bellies. Now I'm going to start thinking, he must have a big tool. He's got to have that. He needs the big shed.
Well, that's what they like to say, because it's sort of a funny line. But I've just met so many different men over the course of my career who can tell me that they like this kind of body on a woman, or they like that kind of body. And what I've learned is to accept the diversity of human preference. There are men who prefer tall, willowy women. There are men who like short, stubby women. There are men who prefer women, as they say, kind of thick. And by that, they often mean, when you find out how much their wife of 20, 30 years weighs, they mean obese.
Yeah.
So, and personally, I think that that's sort of the beauty of our race, in that we have so much diversity, but it also pushes back on the idea of the intentional interview and finding a partner who's truly compatible with me.
And really quick on attraction, though, do you find that that's consistent for men, where they're just attracted to a specific type, and that's kind of what it's like, or are there ones who don't care about that? Or,
I think there's some things like preferences, and it has to do with their taste, their experience. But I've noticed in myself, I can say that over the years, I might have originally liked a woman who was taller and willowy more than shorter and curvaceous, because I think it goes back to my childhood. I was meeting girls who were tall and willowy because they were built pretty much like boys.
All right.
At a young age, all through grade school, right? And that was my comfort zone. And then as time went by, of course, my experience broadened. And now I just see a lot of beauty in all bodies.
Yeah.
I really do, in all body types.
Yeah.
And I'm not adverse to enjoying that. You know, if I'm out and about and engaged in some watching the people around me and noticing who's beautiful, because beauty comes in so many different kinds of packages. So I don't even know, you know, I haven't been single in so long. I don't even know if I anymore would have a preference, or if, and you would, I suppose I would notice that by who I was dating or who I was going up and flirting with. But I just see so much beauty around me. And with women, I see so many women who are far more concerned about a man's character. Is he honorable? Is he honest? Is he courageous? And most of all, is he kind? And I think women around the planet just want to know about what the level of his kindness. And if you look at men, I don't think we're particularly designed to look beautiful or pretty. And I tease my male clients who are worried about their bodies and kind of make fun of my friends in the same way. I don't know if you looked in the mirror today, but dude, you are not good looking. And any woman who's going to be attracted to you is not going to be attracted to you because of your movie star good looks. And I think there's a relief that for me as a man that's not really what it's about. And I always think about that one character in those great J.K. Rowling books about Harry Potter, where the French sorceress or witch, she says, "Ooh la la, I'm more than beautiful enough for the both of us," referring to her fiance who's been disfigured horribly in a fight. She just doesn't care.
Yeah.
And I don't know if most men could ever say that about women, because I think our love of beauty is really part of our DNA. But I know for me, I'm so confident that I could say, God forbid, if anything happened to disfigure my wife, say she needed a surgery that was very disfiguring afterwards, I just wouldn't care. It just really wouldn't bother me, because I'm so smitten with her, and we've had so much intimacy for so many years. Just so long as she's the same person, I think I'd be pretty much good to go.
Yeah.
So but we're not talking about that, because what we're talking about is the individual who's flirted with someone, they find out there's a mutual attraction, and the other person isn't having a problem with me. I'm having a problem with my body.
Yeah.
And I got to say, I just think it's an absolute deal breaker until the person who's got the problem gets over it. And because I've been in those relationships and where I can say to her, "God, you look so beautiful today." No, I don't.
Yeah. It's like never enough.
I'm offering this verbal bouquet to her, and she takes it, makes a frown, and throws it on the floor. That's how it feels. And it's really about her problem. It's not my problem. It's just her problem. And I think I need to be able to be with a partner who, when she hears a compliment from me, knows that it's offered sincerely and is able to accept it. To simply take in a deep breath and exhale, saying thank you. That's all that's required. You don't have to feel okay about yourself or anything else. You might think your hair was having a bad day, or that you didn't particularly like your outfit, or whatever it is. But if the guy who's crazy about her can't say, "God, you look beautiful today," and for her to receive that, it puts a crimp in the ability to transmit love back and forth. And I think the same is true for her. I've been joking with my own wife about this because recently I've put on more weight than I ever have in my entire life. And it's not a big deal, but it's kind of life altering to me because I've had to go out and buy new clothes because my whole clothes don't fit. And I've just never
What
been.
weight did you gain? You look the same.
Really? Yeah. And it's funny because a lot of people say that, but you've known me every day over that process. So you got used to it. You got desensitized. Okay. Me, I'm a guy who's like tried to gain weight my whole life. And now at this age, all of a sudden I'm putting on weight. It's really weird. And my wife just couldn't care less.
No. Do you like that you're putting on weight?
I'm learning to be okay with it.
Okay.
It's just different. And it's a little challenging to get used to. And it's a little annoying because I'll put on some clothing that I've been fond of and wearing for a long time. And all of a sudden, oh my God, I cannot get into this. Then for me, it was only about 14 pounds. But for a skinny person, because I was a skinny person, now I'm a lot less skinny. It's just weird. And that's all, and as little as that is, because I don't think that that's a very large amount of weight to gain or to lose. But it's really an example of how we're all attentive to our body image in a certain way and how little it can take to screw us up for a minute. And mostly I play it up because I love the humor in it. You
got to build that shed.
I haven't used that line, unbelievably. I should have, because I had family staying over recently, but I've never used that line. But because I've never had occasion. I've never had the weight to bring that up. But now I do have a bit of a belly, and I can say, now I'm just practicing acceptance, and that this is who I am today, and this is all right.
Yeah.
And it's a little disconcerting, but I am getting desensitized to the whole process. But I've had men, and this might surprise women, how many men are just hypersensitive about their bodies. And I've always thought of it as a way a man could emotionally abuse a woman by putting her down about her body. But I think it's equally true that a woman can be very emotionally abusive of a man if she chooses to do so by putting down his body. And it's, I think we're all sensitive about this because it is the extension of our being. It's our presentation of self.
Yeah.
And I think for those of us who've been listening to this podcast for a while, I hope that you understand that there is no hope if you can't establish a relationship that's abuse-free and based on equality with another person. So if you're together with someone, male or female, who every once in a while drops a comment, or even only did it once and has never taken it back or apologized, or you haven't been able to move on, I think that's really something to pay attention to, because it is a form of abuse.
A comment saying something about someone's body in a negative way.
It is like the heart and soul of an example of a put down.
Yeah.
If I say, well, I just wish your body were a little more manly, or I just wish you had more muscles, or I wish you had, I wish you weren't so fat, or I wish you were taller, or I wish you were more this or more that, or your penis was. I had one guy who told me that his former partner told him that his penis was too small, and he stayed married to her for years after that, but he was always thinking about it. He was always self-conscious, and I think for the couple who long as a couple, they long for more intimate connections. If you're ashamed of being naked with your partner, that's a pretty tough one to get over. Whether you're skinny or fat or tall or short, whatever it is, it's just, I don't know. I just think it's loathing at a pretty primal level to be attacking somebody's body.
Yeah. Circling back then to the intentional interview.
Yeah.
So how would you kind of bring up this sort of stuff about body image with
Where I want to know if she has a healthy body image.
Yeah, or she wants to know about him, or either or.
Yeah, I guess I would ask that question. I would probably bring up a painful experience from my past, whether it was something in a partner or something in myself. Like when I was younger, I struggled with, feeling too skinny. And I think I had a pretty poor body image when I thought about it, but I didn't really think about it that much. Or at least it didn't inhibit me in terms of, dating. Have you ever struggled with body image problems? After the other person has just told you that they've struggled with body image problems, I think it's a pretty reasonable question to ask.
Yeah.
And to respond to. And if the other person says, I don't think that's any of your business. Okay, there's a red flag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's if they do open up and they say, well, yeah, and this is what they share, but that sharing then will build intimacy and it will.
Well, absolutely it does. And it doesn't mean we're going to be a couple. It doesn't even mean we're going to have sex. She could share something that is deeply personal but there's such a joy in getting to know another person and to be able to share at that level is itself a joy. That's really, again, I think the essence of being a social species is to engage in that kind of social intercourse. And so she's sharing at roughly the same level with each other, and we are getting to know each other. And who knows what's going to turn off somebody? I've shared before on these podcasts, I had this very beautiful woman who was interested in me, but she had freckles. I mean, like thousands and thousands of freckles. And everybody around me wanted to date this woman. And it was just my own hang up. And
wait, so you dated someone who had a bunch of freckles and you couldn't do it?
I could not go there. I just couldn't do it. My brain kept playing connect the dot. And it was just weird. And, but I think what your brain is telling you is not that you're an intolerant, insufferable asshole. It's that for some reason, there's something wrong about this relationship, but your brain is picking on this physical thing that you don't like about the person. And that's just a placeholder. It's just a symbol of, not for me.
Something else.
Yeah. And then later, the funny thing is you might later on in life end up with a person with the exact same body type, and it's perfectly okay. What I've learned is if you're having a hard time with their body, it means you're having a hard time with them. It means you're having a hard time with the idea of being touched by them or being physically close to them in that way. And again, none of this has to do with her, in my case. It has to do with me entirely. It's all about me.
Yeah.
And there's nothing any of us can do about that. There are women who are going to look at a guy like me. I'm just under 6 feet tall. And they say, oh, he's just too short. Or, oh, he's too tall. He's too skinny. Or lately, he's too darn fat. And whatever it is, it's always about them. And that's okay. I had one woman who was a client, and she was so specific in her body type aspirations in terms of men.
What did she want from a man?
Like if he didn't he had to have forearms like Popeye.
Oh, really?
And if he didn't have, really developed forearms, sorry, no way, Jose, this is not happening. And who knew? And there are guys who just can't be with a woman who have, one body part that's too big or too small. And I think all of us, would be well suited to pick up on that, because trying to make that square peg go in the round hole, trying to make a relation, we should all aspire to be with someone, I think, who's crazy about us. And that is a totally doable proposition.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that because he says or she says your body is to this or to that, then you need to discard them and trade up.
Yeah.
Keep looking for that right partner. And I mean that really from the bottom of my heart, because again, if you're going to have a life partner, you really want to be with someone who's crazy about you, not somebody who's checking out everybody else who has more of the body that they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
That would be horrible.
Yeah. And what about the partner who does get in a relationship and then that's what they're doing, where they're looking at all the other, they shouldn't be in that relationship then?
Absolutely. I mean, maybe he or she got into that relationship because they were so needy.
Mm-hmm.
And I have talked to men and women who've made that decision. And then they regret it because they do get some of their needs met. They're getting love. They're not alone. They don't feel the panic that they used to feel when they were alone or lonely, and or wondering if anybody would ever want to be with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get together with someone who's really not for them. They don't really prefer that body type. They really are rather put off by that body type. And it's like the proverbial Chinese water torture. It's not such a deal breaker on day number 1, but by day number 360, it's really bothering them.
Mm.
And yet then they feel shame because I shouldn't make a big deal about this. But you are who you are.
And so then people just have to accept that about themselves.
That this is what I need, or this is what for me, it's...
Unless you get the Stephen Ing where everybody's beautiful.
Well, I think the burden is really on the person who's, each one of us, we're responsible primarily for ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm making a decision to get involved with a partner who's not crazy about me, and what I mean by crazy about me is every dimension of my being, including she likes me physically, she likes me intellectually, she likes me emotionally, spiritually, etc. If I'm somebody who's got major criticisms, I'm not with the right person. Mm-hmm. And they may be right in all their criticisms. I may really need to grow in terms of my ability to engage socially, or my need to develop a life worth living. I may have a lot of room to grow, but even if that's true, I'm still with the wrong partner.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't help any of us to be with somebody who really disdains us.
Yeah.
I know, it's awful, right? Can you imagine just being with a girlfriend who the touch of your hand makes her flesh crawl?
I was with that girlfriend. Yes. I can't imagine that.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's just awful.
Yeah, that was a rough one.
Yeah,
that was hard. Probably still working on a little bit, but definitely was not good. And I don't think it was about me. I think it was about her and her stuff. Absolutely. With her own stuff with her, because she had some things with her mom. And one thing I noticed with some women is their moms are really critical of their own bodies, and then that then could be observed or then transferred over to women. And then that then gets kind of a tricky, difficult situation because, there's nothing I could say that could do that. And then if I don't know, just nothing was right, nothing was enough. And it's just like.
Yeah, when you learn that in your childhood, which is one of the places you would learn that, you learn that this is the way the world is. This is the way other women are looking at me as a woman. And I need to get this right, because if I'm not right, then I'm always going to be left behind and no one's going to want to be with me. Oh, he wants to be with me. Well, it's because he doesn't see this, or he doesn't understand, or he's somewhat socially retarded in his development, but sooner or later he'll figure it out. Then he'll want to be with someone who's built differently. And I think, but again, if you have a mom who's, let's say, on the other extreme, really somebody who loves you, who accepts you just the way they are and loves the way you look and enjoys you, which would I think be the normal way of parenting. I think mothers normally adore their children. And to be able to grow up knowing that you're perfectly adequate for the right woman, that there may be thousands of women who can find you quite resistible, but to hold out and wait for the right women who can see what your mother saw. And that's I learned the hard way that, I need to do that, because if I'm not going to I do that, I'm not ever going to be allowed to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And vice versa. I think every woman is beautiful in her own unique way. And I've just seen it so many times where, a woman will come into my office with a body image problem. Her husband comes in with no problem with her body. And it's clearly all about her. And yeah, of course she needs to, go through some development. But this is not, for those of us who are over 18, this is not an intellectually challenging thing. It's just you realize, okay, this is my problem, not my mate's problem. And if I'm ever going to be happy, I need to get over this.
But how many people will get over that though, or will take those steps to do that?
A lot of people can't bring themselves to do it because the belief is ground so deeply in them that they are ugly, that they are defective, that they are abhorrent. And they simply, of course they don't believe their spouse because he or she is in love with me. And so you're trying to be appealing to all the women of the world who don't love you?
Yeah.
Or to all the men in the world who don't love you? Well, that's not what I'm saying, but I just know that, I know what I look like. Yeah. So that's a pretty messed up way of perceiving the world, isn't it? That I need to have everybody think I'm beautiful or everybody think I'm very handsome. And I just don't think that that's ever going to be true.
Yeah.
Ever.
And have you ever, aside from you as a kid, had issues, like you said, like being too skinny, like in your adult life? Have you ever had body image issues?
Well, I was skinny up until this recent weight. But I mean, I graduated from high school. I was 6 feet tall and weighed 145 pounds.
Yeah.
So I was
skinny.
Yeah, I was pretty skinny. And I mean, even on that body mass index, I was an objectively very low score on that thing, where in terms of the bell-shaped curve of the human race, I was out at pretty close to one of the tails with all the other Skeletors. and then, I would gain every 5 or 10 years, I might gain 5 pounds or 10 pounds through either working out or forcing myself to eat a lot. And I don't know if that was healthy or unhealthy for me, and then most of the time I would give up. So occasionally I was self-conscious, but most of the time I was unimpaired by my my own body and my perception of my body. And then I did a wonderful thing a few years back, and I adopted a greyhound. And I could see how this greyhound was so beautiful while being simultaneously much skinnier than I'd ever thought of being. And when I looked at that beauty and I realized I could see the beauty in this beautiful hound, I could realize, oh, yeah, I too have my own version of that kind of beauty, and that's okay. And it just resolved everything for me. Whatever last vestigial body image problems I had just evaporated with that adopting a greyhound.
But you've had a little something up to that point.
Oh, yeah, I think so. And a little something, but again, not so much that I couldn't believe a woman would be attracted to me, but just that I was always a little surprised.
Okay.
But, I remember even one girl, she was the daughter of a good friend. She had a bumper sticker on her car that said, "I break for skinny white guys."
Oh, really? So you're like, hey.
Well, no, she was like half my age even then.
Oh.
That was a long time ago, but I realized, okay, that's another example of how we're all different. We all have different tastes, because I've also met women who just disdain skinny white guys.
Yeah.
They have to be with a black man, or they have to be with a guy who has a much heavier build, or a build that's at least heavier than their own.
Yeah.
And
is that a common thing where women want that?
I think in my experience, yeah, I think so many women want to feel secure. They look to the man for security. And if she's able to beat him up, I think that's kind of a deal breaker. It just doesn't, it's not real impressive.
Yeah.
Just wait, Jason. It's going to happen to you too.
Where what? I'm going to get beat up by a woman?
Oh, yeah. You haven't lived till you have that experience.
Well, yeah, I've had some of the body issue stuff too. I feel like I'm finally getting. Well, yeah,
I'm a little surprised.
Well, I've been working out, so you saw me back. You saw me more in like a better phase, but
okay.
I mean, when I was younger, didn't really have anything, but then I just remember like picking things apart, like here and there throughout my life about not only like weight, but also
musculature. Or
not really musculature. I always felt fine there.
Just you were an athlete, though, weren't you?
I played a bunch of sports, but
I wasn't even that good. So,
okay.
I mean, you're very humble about it, but
I wasn't on like school teams. I made the 6th grade basketball team.
Well, that's impressive.
And the 7th grade as well, but I quit because I never played. I was fairly athletic. Like I mostly like playing neighborhood sports like football, baseball, basketball, and I excelled in the neighborhood. I was known as a, especially I was really fast. I could have been, I think, an Olympic runner, like for 50-meter dash or something. Like I think that was like my skill that I should have.
That would be your event.
I was like one of the fastest kids, if not the fastest, like around
in your neighborhood.
No, and like the whole schools and all that too. Like I would race people and like things and beat mostly everybody. I was really fast.
But you never trained.
I didn't know. I was too busy doing baseball and basketball, and I was like adding too many things to it. It's like rather than like running and shooting or hitting a ball and running to catch a ball, I should have just been running in a straight line. I think if I maximized my inherent ability and focused on it, I think I could have done something with that.
You could have accomplished something with that, but instead you became a good generalist and you were able to have a lot of fun and joy in your life.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's hard to say. I think what you should have done, I don't know if there is a moral imperative there, but I think that with I do have clients who've excelled in sports to the degree that they specialized and became like nationally ranked, whatever event it was in track and field. And it's really cool for them, but you have to have that desire.
Yeah.
So when you say you had body image,
so like I remember looking at like there's a lot of like boy magazines that like my sister was 2 years older than me and she get like Teen Beat, Tiger Beat magazines. That's like about like the young, hot Jonathan Brandis, Elijah Wood, Ryder Strong. These are like names of the early 90s kids. And I remember like they had them and like looking at them and then like comparing myself to the people on the pages. That's when like a comparison started happening.
Was it mostly about the face?
The face,
the haircut,
face, hair, like all that sort of stuff started like getting associated with that. And then, so that kind of like carried on. And then I also started drinking when I was in high school. And then in college, I gained the freshman 15. And I thought,
I've never heard that expression.
You never heard that?
No, but that's cool.
Well, it's a very common. So I gained that in college, and I kind of was pretty big because I was drinking like giant Pepsis for dinner and burgers and pizza and just all like the most stuff you shouldn't be eating.
Right.
So I gained about 15 pounds, and I remember like looking in the mirror. I was like, yeah, maybe I'm supposed to be like a fat guy, kind of like a bigger guy. Like I was like, I think that's kind of like what.
But you were never fat. You were just fat.
I was big. I was about 190. I think I got to like 190 or so, and I wasn't working out.
That's weird because you're only 5'2" and you weighed 190. That's disgusting.
But then from there,
he's not really 5'2", ladies.
I'm like 5'11", 6 foot ish. So, and then I lost all the weight because I would go work, and I knew I would, and then from there, but I don't know. I think drinking like started giving me a little bit of a gut, and I wasn't like an alcoholic or anything, but drinking on the weekends, and that kind of carried over, and just had some insecurities around that, like having a little bit of a gut thing, and that kind of it was enough there not to make it so I was like immobilized by it, but it made me like uncomfortable in ways, and also like the looks things. And it took until probably, like, this is kind of embarrassing to say, but hopefully I'm saying it for people who struggle with it. But it probably took until probably a few years ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, to then really start like looking at this stuff again. Like, and so I understand how difficult it is, or how much you want to just say how horrible you are, how no one will like you, or just all the common things you say. But then to just start embracing it. And I think when you start embracing your own beauty and your own, and giving yourself compassion, like, you start having a better relationship with yourself and your body. And I think that's when you start like seeing the beauty in everybody else.
I really have to agree with that. And not just the attractiveness of everybody else, but the true beauty of everybody else. For me, you reminded me, and as I was listening to you, of all those boys in 7th grade after PE where they're standing in front of the mirror combing their hair.
Yeah.
And I remember them all being so careful to comb their hair just right. And anybody who thinks boys don't have body image issues should stand in that front of that mirror with the boys while they're doing that, or just remember back to those years, because teenage boys or boys just hitting puberty are very concerned with how they look.
Yeah.
And even though they may have a studied, casual look to themselves, it's very curated.
Totally.
It's got to be the right jeans that fit just the right way, and not a dumb t-shirt, but the right t-shirt. And everything's got to be just right. And so I know there's this propensity on the part of everyone in the human race. And the remedy, I think, for those men who really struggle with this, and for those women who are continuing to struggle as well, is really to get to a place where you can be comfortable with yourself. Once we're comfortable with ourselves, the confidence flows from that level of comfort. So and my suggestion for people to get comfortable with their bodies, whether they're heavy or skinny or too tall or too short, or whatever their defect is, to start a spiritual practice of gratitude for your body, where you can give thanks for the wonder that is the human body. And even for somebody with an impairment like a club foot, or somebody who is in a wheelchair, our bodies are pretty amazing, and they do get us from A to B and from B to C all through the day. Our bodies are able to feed us and to convey pleasure and joy. Our bodies communicate with the people around us through our facial expressions. There's a lot to be grateful for, and you don't have to believe in God to practice a spiritual discipline of gratitude. You can just be thankful and find one thing, just on the first day, one thing to be grateful for about your body. And for some of my obese clients, it's simply to be grateful for the strength that they have in their legs that carries this body around all day long. And then from there, to be grateful for their health, to be grateful for all the other things that go with. And pretty soon, they're starting to give thanks for themselves and for just being alive and for all that comes with that. And it's pretty great. And if you feel comfortable with yourself, you walk with confidence. And if you don't think your weight is a problem, if you don't think your looks are a problem, and you're living your life that way, other people are going to pick up on that.
Yeah.
And the right people, not everybody, but the right people are going to want to get closer to you and to get to know you. And it's just inevitable. So first step is you accepting you.
Yeah, I agree. And another good way to do it is you could go to
right aftershave.
Yeah, no. But for your body, I went to Burning Man last year, and I just was going around. They have different workshops and stuff, and I did one where we were all in a circle, and talked about our bodies and stuff like that. And then
naked, right?
Well, you're with clothes at first, and then
oh my God, really?
Then you turn around, and then you could take off your clothes if you want. So then you decide what you want to do, and then you turn around, and the facilitator was like, I'm going to say ta-da, and then that's when everyone opens their eyes and turns around. And then everyone kind of in the circle turned around and was naked. And then he kind of ran us through different exercises of like looking at ourselves and accepting our bodies and feeling gratitude.
Jump up and down and see how much it jiggles.
Yeah. No, that's what you would do if you were the facilitator. He was very professional. And then we like got in groups, and we're like in groups with their naked, and it's men and women, and talking about, and then there's just the amount of shame, the amount of hatred, the amount of, and then to then transmute that into like love for like finding things that they did love. It was a really like powerful experience.
So you could do what I suggested, which you can do privately in your bathroom at home, or you could go to Burning Man and do it as a group. Yeah. With a mob of naked people.
Yeah. And then you see too, the good thing about that way is you get to see everyone else's body and how everybody's different and beautiful in its own way as well. Like that was kind of,
and that, that's and also the thing. I think when you get into that zone, that's such a powerful moment, and honestly, I see why it mattered to you, and I'm not trying to make a joke out of it when I say this.
Here we go.
But even just sitting in a restaurant, when you look around, I've had the experience of seeing all this diversity, seeing people of all different body types walk in and sit down, and there we all are sharing a meal, in the same restaurant. And there's a beautiful moment in our civilization where we're all eating and feeding our bodies and sharing some time together in proximity with one another. And it's a way of, for me, of seeing the beauty of the human race in all of its diversity.
Yeah. And see what they ordered. It's like,
you had to turn it into
that body got
two double
cheeseburger.
Really? With
fries. Bacon? That one's out of the salad.
No, I don't even look at that. I don't even think about that. But that, because there's some amazing people in every single body type. And you just don't want to be closed off to that. And there's some sort of a miracle I think civilization is a miracle. It's a miracle that the human race can come together, and there are men and women out there helping build roads, and some of us become doctors, and some of us become physicists, and some are teachers. And we're like, it's just an incredible hive of diversity. And when you see that and the beauty of it, you just can't forget it. Yeah. And so it makes it so much easier, I think, once you've seen that, to step away from the mental body shaming that you might otherwise be tempted to engage in.
And then in terms of managing love intelligently, how does this like idea of body image, we talked about a lot of it, but how does it help? Like, because I think, for me, it seems like if you are able to have this positive image of yourself, you're only going to attract somebody who's more like-minded, and you also, I don't know.
Well, maybe that would, I'd like to think that could be true, but I don't see any logic or evidence of it being true, because I think somebody who's perfectly comfortable with themselves can end up with a partner who's very uncomfortable with themselves. So I do think if you're listening to this today and you're uncomfortable with your body and you don't have the ability to give thanks for it, then you might want to, engage in this practice before you get too much farther down the dating train. If you're already married, you still want to do it because you want to let your partner love you, including being able to love your body and appreciate your body for all the pleasure your body is giving your partner in terms of looking at it and touching it and being touched by your body. And I think for those of us, who have those body issues, I think it's just preferable to get over it before we get into a relationship, because it's like spinning too many plates on stage, right? In one of those acts where the juggler's got everything going at once. And I think changing things on my own when I am alone is a little bit easier if I can do it. And if you can't, there's always therapy, and there are always these spiritual exercises that Jason and I were talking about. But don't ever be satisfied or accept somebody who's not crazy about you, including your body. Because if you're with someone who can't keep their hands off you, you know that they're just crazy about you.
Yeah.
And it isn't because he's a gentleman. If he doesn't do that, it's because he still hasn't come out as gay.
Yeah. Well, he's as long as he doesn't do it in public, you don't want to be.
Well, I think holding her hand, arm around her shoulder, squeezing her arm,
yes,
whispering in her ear how beautiful she looks.
That's
all
good,
of that,
but,
right?
Yeah, but not taking
her clothes off in public like you did,
like I did. Yeah. Well, I haven't taken other people's clothes off. I just took my own off.
That's the part that catches you as sex crime. But it's the same. I think it's crazy for any woman out there to get together with a man who's not crazy about her in that way, and vice versa. I think to be a man who is just like, oh, I'm just grateful I have a girlfriend, without paying attention to asking her, yeah, but how does she feel about your body? And I don't want to hear some kind of lukewarm, it's okay.
Yeah.
I want to hear something with some enthusiasm and appreciation, because that's important.
Yeah.
Over time. It really doesn't wear well if she's just not that into you.
Yeah. Yeah. Take it from experience. I know. Does not wear well at all. All right. So let's wrap up there. And to end, we have a listener question. And if you have a question for Steve, you could visit stevening.com and fill out the contact form. And this week's question is as follows. Dear Steve, my boyfriend and I are having arguments about our bedtime routine. I need to sleep earlier in a dark, quiet room. He's up late and likes to be in bed scrolling and playing videos on his phone with the volume on. When I asked him if he could do it before coming to bed, he had a screaming tantrum and told me I was too sensitive. He also gets upset when I go to sleep on the couch. We've had bad fights about this, and we each think the other is selfish. Which one of us is being unreasonable? I'm exhausted and chronically sleep deprived. I think I know the answer, but I think I need to hear it from you.
Yeah. Wow. Well, this is just, we're talking about a miserable situation, right? And that's what she gets for marrying an 11-year-old. But if sleep deprivation is her issue, I mean, that's a form of torture. And there's no reason. My wife and I sleep in the same bedroom, but every once in a while we've toyed with the idea of having separate bedrooms because we live in a house by ourselves. And I'm really open to that idea because the kings and queens of Europe always had king's quarters and queen's quarters, and somehow they still seem to reproduce and have a great sex life and all of that. And I think that if somebody really needed a perfectly quiet room and I was incapable of being quiet enough, it doesn't take away from our relationship for us to sleep in separate rooms. But the idea that I have to go to sleep on the couch because he just can't stop playing video games on his phone or watching YouTube videos, and he won't wear headphones or any of that stuff, I think it's just so ill-mannered and inconsiderate. And it also betrays, I don't know, for me, the sort of juvenile view of life and the indifference to the discomfort of others that I think is lacking in compassion. So it sounds to me, again, like we have a woman who really doesn't have much respect for him, but she's still trying to make it work. And I think to accept, no, I don't respect this guy. I need to get out and move on. And I think that's really important because he's not going to get better. And if you can be free of him, then you have a chance to meet some guy who doesn't do all that. And again, taking that horrible experience into your future, it becomes part of the intentional interview.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the interview doesn't have to be asking questions. It can be simply talking about your experience and observing the other person and seeing what they're all about. This whole thing about gaming, it's come up, I guess, twice in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And I don't hate gaming. I'm no good at it. I suck at it because I think it's a generational issue in my case, but there are plenty of people in my generation who do play and who enjoy it. I just never got into it. And if I met someone who was a potential partner who was a gamer, I think I'd be okay with that as a form of recreation. It doesn't bother me any more than reading a magazine or watching a TV show. What would bother me, though, is if it was so compulsive that there was no downtime and there was no compassionate concern about the other people in the household.
Yeah.
That would really bother me. So, for me, that would be a new deal breaker. I haven't had to face that one ever yet.
Gamers.
Yeah, if they weren't considerate and they're bringing their gaming equipment into the bed, and that sort of thing, that's like ridiculous.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for that question, and thank you, Steve, for answering. And that wraps up the show. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll catch you all next week. Bye.
Yeah, this was a painful one, wasn't it? Body image.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The pain. But you know what they say, no pain, no gain. Right?
Well, you have a really good attitude about it because it sounded like it was really unpleasant.
No, it was good. I enjoyed it.
No, but I mean back in the day.
Oh, yes, for that. Yeah, it was.
I want to say
I'm gonna go home and cry. So if that's what you want to know, that's what everyone wants to know.
No, I wanted to say thanks for sharing that.
Cool.
That cost you something to share that.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it helps you all. We'll see you later. Bye.